When it came to the 2012 NFL Draft, the main debate revolved around the top two quarterbacks, Andrew Luck and RG3. But along with those two, receivers were a major talking point. In fact, there was one of the most hyped up prospects in recent memory taken in the top 5, Justin Blackman. Along with Blackman, there were another 3 receivers taken in the first round. And years later, we can look back and see just how much these dudes lived up to the expectations. Spoiler alert, there were some massive busts. Overall, with 9 receivers selected within the first 64 picks and 33 receivers in the entire draft, how did things turn out 9 years later? Now, before we dive in, I'd like to thank SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. As the season winds down, some of the best games are yet to come. And what's great is SeatGeek takes tickets from all across the web and puts them into one area, making buying simple. They have tickets for everything, whether it's football, basketball, or other events. They place these tickets on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. And also, first-time buyers can use my promo code KTO for $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to SeatGeek for the sponsor. Now, let's dive into the video.
With the 5th pick in the 2012 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Justin Blackman, wide receiver, Oklahoma State.
Justin Blackman was the #1 ranked receiver in the NCAA in 2011. He finished the year off as the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, won his second Fred Biletnikoff Trophy in a row, and had over 100 yards in every single game his final season at Oklahoma State. He received comparisons to Anquan Boldin and Terrell Owens for his playstyle. And since Jacksonville was trying to find weapons for their young quarterback Blaine Gabbert, Blackman made a lot of sense. But despite Blackman's remarkable talent, it didn't take long to start to see some red flags.
Jaguars first-round pick Justin Blackman arrested on DUI charges this morning. It's the second time in less than 2 years that Blackman has been arrested for DUI.
Before playing in his first NFL game, 2 DUIs within 2 years made a lot of people wonder if Jacksonville just made a huge mistake drafting Blackman. But he was able to get past this for the time being, and played his rookie season in 2012. The results were as many expected.
Caught at midfield by Blackman. Still on his feet, Justin Blackman. Wow!
Blackman went on to lead all rookies in receptions and receiving yards, including a 236-yard performance versus the Houston Texans. Unfortunately, this turned out to be the peak of his NFL career. In the offseason, the NFL suspended Blackman for 4 games after he violated the substance abuse policy. Once he returned to the field, he balled out once again. But this was short-lived, since he was suspended for a second time, again violating the substance abuse policy. Entering his 3rd year, Jacksonville's GM announced that it was unlikely Blackman would be joining the team that season after he was busted for weed, on top of his already existing suspension from the year before. At this point, the coaches were praying something would change, but things only got worse. The NFL would deny his reinstatement for the 2015 season, and shortly thereafter, Blackman was arrested for another DUI, eventually resulting in a year of probation. Overall, Blackman had a ton of upside, and even showed off his ability for a brief time in the NFL, but off-the-field issues kept him playing only 1.5 seasons before never returning.
With the 13th pick in the 2012 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Michael Floyd, wide receiver, Notre Dame.
Coming in as one of the bigger wide receiver prospects, Michael Floyd drew comparisons to Jordy Nelson for his elite-level hands and finding holes in the defense. The Cardinals had one of the worst offenses in football the year before, so Michael Floyd was possibly the spark needed to get this unit going again. Year 1 was rough though, mostly because Arizona had absolutely terrible quarterbacks, and Ken Whisenhunt as the head coach. Things started to change after his rookie season when the team hired Bruce Arians and brought in Carson Palmer. Floyd excelled in 2013, posting a 1,000-yard season. Alongside Larry Fitzgerald, Floyd went on to become a decent level receiver from 2013 to 2015, but he never became quite the dominant player like many had hoped. He wasn't a bust. at least through his first 4 seasons. When the team decided to pick up his 5th-year option in his contract, Floyd would be released midway through the season following a DUI, and he never recovered from that, at least on the field. Because following that DUI, he managed to get very little playing time in 2017 and 2018. Then in 2019, he was cut for the final time. At best, he was a good number 2 receiver for a few years. As of now, he's an assistant receivers coach at Concordia University, St. Paul.
With the 20th pick in the 2012 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Kendall Wright, wide receiver, Baylor.
Coming from that electrifying offense at Baylor, Kendall Wright was RG3's go-to guy. His explosive playmaking ability, along with his versatility to line up anywhere, drew comparisons to the speedy Percy Harvin. Like Michael Floyd, Wright's first season was rough. He began as the 3rd receiver on the depth chart, working his way up to more playing time. And due to poor quarterback play and a limited offense, he was mostly a check-down receiver, finishing with a little over 600 yards. Things improved the following season. With Ryan Fitzpatrick now starting the majority of games at quarterback, Wright went on to have the 7th most catches in the NFL. But he saw his production begin to decline over the next few years. It got to the point to where ultimately he was upset and wanted to get out of Tennessee after 2016. Looking for a career renaissance in Chicago, he had another underwhelming season. After only 1 year with them, the Bears were ready to move on. He would go on to be signed and released by 2 franchises in 2018. And at this point, Wright's time in the NFL was over. Recently, he did try to make a run in the CFL, but it didn't work out. And at the end of the day, Wright was a bit undersized and never turned into the reliable number 1 receiver.
With the 30th pick in the 2012 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select A.J. Jenkins, wide receiver, Illinois.
A.J. Jenkins, the man who was going to help ignite the Niners offense. Well, long story short, the Niners reached the Super Bowl that year with a virtually unstoppable offense at times. The only problem for AJ was he didn't catch a single pass. In fact, he played only in 3 games and received only 1 single target, and he would never play for the Niners again. What's crazy was this dude was healthy enough to play all season. He was just nowhere near the ability they thought he was coming out of college. Things were so obvious after training camp that Jenkins was a member of the practice squad at times. The only play I can even find with him in a Niners uniform was this preseason catch he had, which he fumbled. The Niners wasted no time keeping him around and cut him following 2012. This made him the only first-round pick from that class to be released after 1 season. The Chiefs decided to take their shot with him, but after 2 years, he had barely even sniffed the field as a receiver. He was released after 2014 and never played in the NFL again. But anyway, 4 first-round receivers, and ultimately 4 guys who didn't last very long in the NFL. The second round had some interesting names, like Stephen Hill, who many people saw as Calvin Johnson 2.0. And his career kind of got off to an amazing start, but his time in the NFL fizzled out rather quickly. In reality, the only guy who even turned into a solid receiver from the first 2 rounds was Alshon Jeffrey, the 5th best receiver going into the draft according to WalterFootball.com. Then when you look at the entire 33-player draft class, the one guy who truly blew the expectations out the window was T.Y. Hilton, the 12th rated, speedy, undersized receiver out of FIU. He leads the entire class in receiving yards and receptions, and it's not even close. Kind of fascinating to see a 3rd, 2nd, 5th, and another 3rd rounder before you even see a 1st rounder pop up. 9 years removed from this draft, and only 6 of the 33 receivers remain in the NFL. And funny enough, the most famous, or rather I say infamous receiver from this class, wasn't even drafted in the regular NFL draft. He was taken in the supplemental draft due to his off-the-field issues. And those off-the-field issues ended up becoming one of the main storylines during the last decade. Of course, this is all because Josh Gordon, at one point, came out of nowhere and was doing things like this.
in the end zone. First, it's caught by Gordon. He's over 200 yards. This has never happened back-to-back in the history of pro football, and he takes it